What is the development of warp travel during the Dark Age of technology? When did the men of stone and gold first do this, go out into the galaxy, and why? When did the navigators come into play, and what insight can the Leagues of Votann offer us? Welcome friends to another 40k video, and let's begin. Mankind was ruled by a race called the Men of Gold, masters of genetics who spread across the face of old Earth, multiplying and establishing order and civilization on the anarchy of nature, and they in turn created the Men of Stone, a, to my mind, mix of human and mechanical parts who bring many miracles and marvels of technology with their ascension. And it's the Men of Stone who are sent out into the wider 40k galaxy. This is due to the growing population on Earth, so I assume it's the idea of testing it, and then they sent out fleets after that successful test with the growing populace. When the Men of Stone went out, initially, they first made the Men of Iron to be their hands and ears, i.e. troops. Then the Men of Stone went forth with their servants and swam in the deep oceans, another way to refer to the warp. The souls of the Men of Stone, due to their nature, were dim within the warp, but due to the energy in the warp, the energy left behind by souls going there, you would still need the Geller field and a warp drive, which is why I place their discovery at this stage, likely made by the Men of Stone as well. The warp drive, as the name suggests, let you travel through to the warp and back again, and the Geller field, when you are in the warp, allows you to create a normal bubble of reality, so you can travel there without the soul energy disintegrating you. It seems the warp was calmer at this time, though only parts I'd argue, since demons and the gods of chaos always have existed there within the warp, even before their creation, as time does not touch you there. So what happened after this? The best fit for me comes from the Leagues of Votann. We know they set out on generational ships and aimed for the galactic core. They are a group of miners and settlers. They have a warp drive that lets them take a warp plunge. These are short, controlled warp bursts, calculated by an Ironkin wayfinder, who can calculate probable paths through the warp. Travelling in plunges takes longer than the vast warp jumps made by later humanity, but it ensures the kin arrive where and when they intend almost every time. I think that sort of warp travel would have been made by Dark Age humanity at this time, and thus why generational ships were required. They can calculate the distance at this time with Ironkin, while Men of Iron, albeit at an early stage, before they fully awaken as sentient beings, so they can calculate and travel further. Now I think we come to the introduction of the navigators, so that they can travel further accurately would be the idea behind their design. I believe they're introduced by Dark Age humanity to help with warp travel, genetically engineered psychers. We have many clashing dates for when they emerge, but around this time would be my guess. They, as the name suggests, navigate, allowing someone to move through the materium to the warp and back again, with navigators seeing and gauging where and when this should happen. This allows the ships to travel further and with more accuracy, opening up more of the galaxy quicker and allowing Dark Age humans' empire to expand quicker and further. And as something better comes along, this will have replaced the warp plunge and the navigators, the kin wayfinders for the most part. An additional technology was also introduced to help with this travel. In the time of 40k, the Emperor controls the power of the Astronomicon, but does not generate it himself. That's the sacrifice of psychers. And the Astronomicon is a psychic beacon that can be seen by navigators travelling within the warp, and they can use it, sense it, within about half of the galaxy, to know when to emerge out of the warp, literally, like a lighthouse beacon guiding ships to dock. They didn't have this in the Dark Age, but they did have equivalents that would have allowed Dark Age ships that same advantage. They come in the form of the Coral Engine. It's built into the planet's core, dates from the Dark Age, and needs human cycles to help power them. Perhaps with their command of the warp energy in the Dark Age, this was provided by some sort of technological solution. In the example we have, it strengthens the power of the Astronomicon, focusing its energy bright and further. As an example, it pushes back warp storms, and if it strengthens the light, this means it had light itself. I propose there could have been a number of these within the Dark Age Empire, casting their beacons into the warp and acting as the Astronomicon does, as a beacon to guide ships out of dangerous areas and to safely dock. If the warp was calm, then the Sea of Souls would have been easier to navigate, and though we see it can calm warp storms, I don't imagine this feature would be needed, if at all, in the Dark Age. So at this stage, ships travel in the warp with ease, rarely needing the coal engines, and the chances of demons seem low. But what if there were threats in the warp, other Xenos travelling there, other warp creatures? you might want a safer way to travel, and we get an example of this with the Dark Age technology warp gates, a safer way to travel the warp. They create a fixed exit and entry point, a tunnel through the warp, and these gates can appear over a number of locations, deep into space outside a solar system, within systems, or even on planets, and they vary in size. They can also link between worlds like a Dark Age webway, but are rare and could have been more common during the Dark Age. Dawn says it's like this. If you think of the natural currents of the warp like a river, bending and flowing as nature dictates, a warp channel, that is, the warp space stretched between two aligned warp gates, is more like a canal, tamed, navigable, slower than going downstream but faster than struggling upstream, and where for regular travel you must translate back into the materium on the edge of the system, the gate lets you appear closer, and Rogue Trader has more on this subject, which we'll go into now. They are usually large enough for spacecraft to pass through. Others are large enough to allow small craft through, or human-sized creatures. Those types are on planet surfaces and lead directly to other gates on other planets. Eldar, eat your heart out. It notes again, gates are rare, the smaller type especially. Planetary gates are often disguised or respond to only electrical, psychic, or other signals, so little tendency for secrecy on the part of the builders seems to be there. Now within the Rogue Trader lore, it doesn't state they were made by Dark Age people, but Dawn does in his Primarch novel, if I remember that quote location correctly. Rogue Trader also notes the following. All Xenos are prepared to use the warp gates, but man appears to be one who favours it, and the gates can be defective. They can dump a ship randomly into warp space, others can lead to places which may once have been stars or planets but are now empty, and appearing at the place of Xenos Empire is also a danger. It may also be that craft vanishing into warp space have been transported beyond the galaxy itself. Warp gates also have the disadvantage of being predetermined, permitting travel only between two fixed lanes, whereas obviously you have that choice when you are on a ship with a navigator on board. Most warp gates that still exist seem to be within the region of 20 to 30 light years apart. So that's what I picture the evolution of Dark Age warp travel being from what we know. What do you think? Does it hold together for you? Can you imagine warp gates and core engines making the warp safer to travel? Do you believe it was ever a car, as we get mentions of it quite a lot? My opinion goes back and forth. On that note, let me know your thoughts, and if you like this video on 40k, then why not try this one? And if you want a whole bunch of 40k videos, I have two playlists on the channel. One covers everything and one specialises in the Dark Age of technology. I also cover Trench Crusade on the channel, which shares a lot of real world DNA with 40k. I previously covered Dune on the channel, there's a playlist for that, and I'm adding to it as new ideas come to me. I also covered, in brief, work by two other sci-fi authors, Pierce Brown, who wrote Red Rising, and the Sun Eater series by Christopher Rocchio, soon to come to completion. I've done a few videos on each of them if you want to check them out. With that, I shall bid you adieu.